What's up, guys? I am starting a little early, like usual. I think I start every single live stream pretty early here. It is 11:50 essentially Eastern time, and this thing's scheduled to go on at noon. Again, a little early. So how's everybody doing? I wish I could say that things here are super amazing, but it's been a little bit of a wonky 2 weeks, so you probably noticed that I hadn't put out a video in a little while. And I didn't do a Q&A last week. So here's the story about last week. One of my cats got very, very ill, and I really couldn't focus on a whole lot because like this cat just got sick on Sunday and just for the rest of the week stopped eating. And it was a bunch of trips to the vet and trying to figure all that stuff out. So basically it's like I can't really focus on anything creative during that time. Just trying to make sure that my cat doesn't die or something. But luckily she recovered. She's back to her old big fat self. So that's good. Just as she's getting better, like yesterday, early morning, I'm groggy, grabbing my cup of coffee, and I get stung by a bee on my neck. I don't know if you can see it, but it's like right there. Like that is the most jarring thing to have happen in the morning. Like, I'm barely awake. This thing wasn't flying around or anything like that. It's not like, oh, this thing was buzzing around and I didn't notice a bee flying around. I mean, it just must have been hanging out in my clothing. And so when I just put on my stuff in the morning, didn't really think about it. And all of a sudden it's like this piercing pain. It's like, I knew right there. It's like, I just got stung by a bee at 8 in the morning in my own kitchen. So that was a little bit messed up. And the problem is like when I was a kid, I was like allergic to bees, and I hadn't been stung by a bee in a really, really long time. And I had to drive like an hour to go see a coral supplier in town. And so I'm like thinking, I really hope I just don't like pass out or something like that while I'm on the highway. But luckily it wasn't too bad. All right, so hello everyone. Thank you all for joining. Let me catch up here with chat. Just, oops, misclicked. Oops. Okay, so just so I can see and actually respond to chat occasionally. So what's up, psychedelic babes? Haley, I know I see some familiar faces here. What is up, Nathan and Dave? Thanks you guys for coming. Thank you guys. And hello from Bahrain. That's a new one. I don't think that we've had viewers from there before. At least I can't remember. Psychedelic babe, give me a wrench. All right, let me see if I can do that here. I will add a moderator. And where's Nathan? I saw Nathan in here someplace. Nathan, there you go. Are there any big projects at the works at TG? Nope. Nothing of the sort. I don't know what you're talking about. So Nathan is where I got a lot of my bounce mushrooms and stuff like that. You've seen his tank featured on this channel. So let's see. Welcome everyone. Yeah, so the other thing is the nice thing about heading off to the supplier this past weekend was I was finally actually able to load up on some large polyp stony corals. We've been low. I mean, low is a gross understatement as to what our inventory levels were looking like on the website. It was just like a week or so ago that I actually took a peek, and it's like the entire large polyp stony section of Tidal Gardens is just like zeros. Like elegance, 0. Trachophilia, 0. Just everything. Scoles, 0. Acanthophilia, 0. So it's just like, what do we do here? I mean, do we even sell coral? I don't understand what's going on. Like where, like fungi is like, no. Basically, if it's a large polyp stony coral, we didn't have it. And that's like, it's absurd because like we have this greenhouse. It is full of coral. But for whatever reason, like maybe something's not looking quite right, or we're waiting to propagate such and such. But we were just super, super low. So it was very nice to actually go out there, get a few new pieces because, I mean, certain things like scoles, for example, you can't propagate them. So we have them on the site just to kind of have them to offer. But It's been a long time apparently, because the entire category, the entire huge category of corals is just doing nothing. So let's see. All right, let's handle some Q&A. That's what we're here for, right? So John Bowton, how can basically can rose bubble tip anemones split naturally, or do you cut them? I let them split naturally. Now there's much more experienced people when it comes to bubble tips than me, but we just let them do their own thing, because there's some varieties that can be cut very easily and they'll just recover no problem. There's other kinds that if you cut them, you're basically killing them. And unfortunately, it's the really, really, really nice ones typically that you can't be cutting. Like a lot of the ones that are like bright yellow. I mean, I'm sure you know the different names of them better than me, but it's like the super bright ones. Anytime that I've seen anybody try to cut those, it's gone poorly. So we have a giant tub just full of them, and I just let them do their own thing. Matthew Parker, love the elegance you sold me. Glad you like it. We finally got some more, but it's been a little while. How is Maxima clam availability? Okay, so clams, generally speaking, are available. Okay, the problem is we do a complete garbage job of keeping them alive. And I mean, it's to the point where, you know, I've even tried to have some systems that are kind of more tailor-made for them, but what eventually happens is there's other things in that system that we would have to dip, for example, just to like, you know, just to kind of keep up on pests and whatever might be going on. And that dipping cycle really adversely affects clams. The other thing is sometimes we have to move stuff around. Clams don't like being moved around. That goes poorly. So long story short, we can bring in clams anytime we want. The problem is it's almost never a good idea for us to do it because they just don't last here. And it's not even the, oh, just get them in and sell them. It's, we do really, really, really poorly with them. So I think until we have like a really, truly dedicated system where there's nothing else but clams in there, and we can kind of tailor all the maintenance around their health, we're probably not going to see clams for a little while. Let's see. And I apologize if I'm missing a lot of stuff in chat. Chris Downey, Montipore for 20-gallon nano tank. What's the best kind and is it resilient? Well, Montipora, I think, as far as SPS go, are fairly resilient. I mean, especially when you're comparing it to Acropora, they're going to require a lot of light. So in a 20-gallon tank, you might run into heating issues, as in overheating issues. But typically in smaller aquariums, the type of lighting that people put over top might not be the best thing for Montipora, because you look online, Google image search, there's some incredibly brightly colored Montes. But in order to achieve that coloration, you do have to provide quite a lot of light and high quality light, and oftentimes it's not really there in some of these smaller setups. But as far as like the coral itself being hardy, I'd say middle of the road. AM Fit Elite Reefer, which T5 bulbs would you pick for maximum growth? Oh, missed the last part. On a 4-bulb fixture, or best bulb growth in general? I personally like Blue Plus by ATI, but typically the more yellow the bulb is, the better. And that's so counterintuitive, but the kind of the uglier, yellower, whiter, more daylight looking bulbs have a more complete spectrum, and they even have more blue spectrum than lights that appear more blue. So if you're looking just for total output and coral coloration, you're looking at some rather unflattering light bulbs. Okay. Mother Earth Network. What is your favorite type of coral out there? I really don't have one. In the past, it was something like Blastomusa or Elegance, and I guess I still do like that, but Not crazy. Is it possible to coral dip with vinegar? That does not sound like a good idea, Julian. I've never heard of that. You should think about doing a live stream at night. Occasionally, I have considered doing a live stream at night, Jesse. The reason why I haven't is A, it kind of alienates the European crowd, because you probably noticed that there's a lot of EU and even like Middle Eastern folks and stuff like that. If I do it at night, it pretty much is like US, North America, maybe even some South America, but pretty exclusive to that. But occasionally I have done it. And also our actual live sale, it's in the afternoon. But sometimes I'm just like too tired at night, and it's like it'd be a bad show because I'd have no energy. It'd be like the most low energy, and I'm already given a lot of crap online for being low energy. So there's that. So let's see. Clay Blake. Hi there. How will the recent Hawaii collection ban impact the hobby? And what fish species will it impact? Well, clearly all the Hawaiian fish. So you're talking like yellow tangs, you're talking chevrons, things of that sort that are kind of Hawaii specific. Yeah, how will it affect the hobby? I don't know. It's one of those things that, again, it's like Hawaii is a weird ground in that it's very, there's a lot of groups in place that are very aquarium hostile, I guess. And I mean, how much stuff really comes out of Hawaii? Fairly little. So like in the hobby as a whole, I don't see it as much, but I mean, obviously it's, if you're more into like the fish trade, like some like larger suppliers, like wholesalers in LA, they might be feeling a bit of a hit. I'm missing so much chat. So I appreciate you guys sticking with me. If you guys have to spam your questions just for today, trust me, I don't mind seeing it. Or if any of you guys can answer each other's questions, help me out. Even though that's kind of not the purpose of the show. Okay, so how many 39 watt T5 bulbs would we recommend for 36 by 10 by 14 coral QT? You could probably go for just coral quarantine. You could just do 2. If you wanted to go to do 4, that might be like, so you're talking 10 inches front to back. I don't know if there's even room for more than 2, but 2 to 4 if you could fit it. In your opinion, can newly purchased Passilopora damicornis recover from bleaching, mostly on one side of the coral? The other side is looking fine. Yeah, so that's from Mindboggle 100. Yeah, absolutely. Don't overdo lighting because they never really needed that much to begin with, but sure, they can recover. Aaron's aquarium dipped in vinegar. That's why you're asking. Okay, yeah, that's the first time I've ever heard of it. That would not be my go-to. All-American angler, where are you from? I am from Burma, or Myanmar as it's now called. And I do want to go back and visit. It's been a little while, meaning about 38 years since I've been there. King of Soul, fan, are you coming to Chicago for the aquatic experience? You know, I've never been to that show. I've been invited before, but I've never made it. It's not on my calendar currently, but it's not out of the realm of possibility just because I have friends in the area. Jimmy Van, do you prefer to run 2 skimmers for an SPS system, one for wet and one for dry skimming? Personally, no. It's an interesting idea. Sometimes the issue with trying to run 2 skimmers on any given system is that what happens is one skimmer simply outperforms the other. So for example, the wet one that you're kind of tuning more aggressively will just simply shut down the other one. So I have heard of people running into issues with that with multiple skimmers. Now, if you had a very large system with many tanks, you could stagger the location of those skimmers so they're not like right next to each other. So let's say if you have 5 separate tanks in one system, you could put them in tanks 1 and 3, for example, to kind of like spread out the skimming, and that might work a little bit better for you. Okay, so you're saying Aaron did not dip in vinegar. Okay. Again, I've never heard of that being a thing. Could high nitrates and ammonia cause fish to get ick? It's possible. That is like anything that stresses fish could lead to like secondary infection, secondary parasites, and things of that sort. Than, have you ever heard of no-pox overdosing? And besides water changes, any tips to help out corals that are extremely stressed? Okay, so first off, no-pox, is that the Red Sea product? I'm not sure. Reason why I'm looking is I hear my phone buzzing, and I don't know who would be calling me because no one has that number. Anyway, let's see. Other things to help corals that are stressed. You could lower lighting, because sometimes sometimes just the overabundance of light could be kind of causing them to retract a little bit. I'd also take a hard look to see if there's anything actively bothering it. Mother Earth Network, do you like to use refugiums on your systems? I personally do. Yeah, I think there's a lot of benefits to refugiums. Good place to have algae growing, because some of my favorite fish for doing maintenance on a tank, they're like heavy herbivores, and so you really can't do a lot of macroalgae and things like that. And there are benefits to macroalgae, like just as a nutrient scrubbing methodology. It's also like a great place for like copepods and amphipods and all kinds of microfauna to proliferate. So it's great to have that little section aside for things like that. How do you deal with Chromis anthias aggression among themselves? So Kayvon, honestly, it's difficult. You really have to kind of go into the extremes, either very, very few fish or very, very, very many fish. And most people can't do the many fish route. So you need a very large tank, and we're talking 50, 100 fish. Okay, nitrates won't directly cause ick. Correct. Nitrates, I mean, nitrate it's a chemical parameter, and you're talking about parasites. But a fish's natural immune system can fight off a lot of things. And if in a low stress environment, even if the parasites are in the water, it's probably not going to be something that's going to manifest in them actually getting sick. But it's any kind of like stressor on top of that could like weaken their immune system, and then these secondary things pop up. Kind of like my cats. They have upper respiratory infections, but it's only when they get like super stressed and that expresses itself, and so they get like flare-ups. Then they're now susceptible to bacterial infections that I need to get like antibiotics for and stuff like that. Their eyes will start watering and stuff. Okay, that's the second time that my phone is ringing, so let me go find it real quick. One sec. Dude, you're a jerk. This dude is calling me on my own live stream. Thanks, Nathan. Real bro. So, literally, like 2 people have this phone number, and I needed to coordinate with Nathan to go pick up some bounce mushrooms at his house. So he's one of the few people. And this is why I don't give out my phone number. See, I have people that just mess with me. Thanks, Nathan. Thanks. I can't believe you answered. Of course. Good job, bro. Good job. Masterful troll job. Yeah, I guess who's gonna get that number blocked. All right. Crunch. So what's funny is like this phone, I don't even know the phone number to it. So it's really hard for me to even give it out to people. Like when people ask me like, what's their phone number? I give them like the Tidal Gardens corporate number. It's like I'll sort it out later. But like I think like my mom has this number. One of my employees has this number. Obviously Nathan has this number, and like maybe like one or two other people. Like that's it. Apparently I need to pare down that list. Oh boy. Yeah, it looks like I gotta burn my phone. I gotta get a new phone. So if somebody wants a Samsung S8 Plus, let me know. They found me. Okay, let's see. Okay, starting GFO on my tank. What's a good starting point? You're going to want to stick to, so different GFO products have different dosing requirements, as in like how much you're supposed to use. You'll want to stick close to that, if not like 75% or 50% of what they recommend, because it's possible to really overdo GFO. It's not one of those things that if you use a little bit more, it's not a big deal, like activated carbon. GFO can really strip out the water, and you'll notice it really, really quickly in your corals, and unfortunately it takes a long time to bounce back. So if anything, I would bring it all the way back down to about 50% to start with. Okay, Coral RX, so basically only use Detol. Yeah, Coral RX is expensive. I mean, I think, see, a lot of these dips and things like that, there's no ingredients on there. It's probably something super simple and super cheap in these. I mean, it smells like pine oil. It might just be pine oil, but who knows? I mean, I've since I've used Coral RX a lot, I'm comfortable with it. Price tag doesn't really bother me. We use so much of it. I wouldn't risk just kind of like trying to DIY a coral dip. I mean, corals are going to be way more expensive than the cost of the dip, so that's just me. Type 40, how are you, Than? I'm doing okay. Last week was stupid because my cat got sick, and that threw off my whole week. And some of you guys that might have missed like just the first couple minutes of the conversation, but like yesterday morning, first thing in the morning, getting my coffee, and I get stung in the neck by a bee in my own kitchen. Yeah, it's not fun. So anyway. Jonathan Dove, are you open to the public? I live like 3 hours away. We are not, we don't have open hours, but we do have visitors by appointment. So if you'd like to set up an appointment, just go to our email forum on the website, fire us off an email, and we'll try to accommodate a visit. Bill Gould, vermeted snails will subside over time. I'm not sure if you're answering somebody else's question, but in my experience, vermeted snails just keep on proliferating. So if I was to have like a home show tank, I would try to be diligent about removing them. Yeah, like Doctor of Welsh Magic. Hand remove as many as you can and learn to live with a few. Yeah, and the other thing you can do is like if you have certain smaller pieces of rock that might have some on there that you can easily remove just that piece of rock, take that rock out, clean it off, let it sit outside for like a week, bring it back in. And if you can kind of rotate your rock out, that's kind of how you're able to take care of large populations of them. But otherwise it's going to be kind of meticulous, take out 10 a day sort of thing, and eventually you'll catch up. Have you tried Julian Sprung dip? Two Little Fishies. Which one do they make? Is that Revive? I think it's Revive, and I think we've tried it once. I forget exactly the details. It might be an iodine-based dip. It might be one of the pine dips. I think we just had one bottle of it. Okay, pros and cons of waiting a full year before adding corals. A full year is a long time. and I tend to be pretty conservative when it comes to stocking new tanks, but realistically, I don't know if there's going to be a whole lot of difference between 6 months and 12 months. I think if pretty much any change that you're going to see is going to be so minor from that 6 month point on. I mean, 6 months is like a long time. I mean, I know a lot of folks that just wait like 2 or 3 months even. I would tend to be in that 4 to 6 month range, if at all possible. And even that gets derailed here because there's a lot of hands that go into tanks. And like, I'll say I want to wait 6 months. There's going to be corals in there in 2 months, just cause. So I guess like the major con to that would be you have a tank sitting empty for a full year. That's the big one. Mother Earth Network. What does your electric bill look like at the end of the month? It depends a lot, and believe it or not, it's a lot more to do with the air conditioning in my house than it is anything else. Like a lot of the electrical costs that we ring up are to do with cooling. So there's like a big exhaust fan out of the greenhouse. There's a big just a cooling budget just for my house because my house is like over 100 years old and it's very poorly insulated. So yeah, the heating and cooling cost of just the house is worse than the greenhouse. Now, our electricity bill is not insanely difficult to manage just because we live in Ohio, in Northeast Ohio in particular, has very, very, very low electricity rates. It's probably some of the lowest in the whole country. We pay for that in bad air. Like I think that, you know, people think of like LA or Houston having bad air. If you look at the actual particulates, Ohio is worse than LA. And so we pay for it in lung cancer, but we do get cheap electricity. Okay, Dave's nanotanks. Oh, he's answering somebody else's question. Thank you, Dave. Is it possible for a sea urchin to eat small heads from an acan colony? It depends on the sea urchin, but yeah, it is possible. So, some sea urchins, like the main risk that I see with them is that they're kind of bulldozers and they kind of push stuff off, and sometimes they'll have a coral flip over onto another coral and both of them will die or something like that. But it's possible for certain things like sea urchins and certain starfish, things like that, to start eating coral. Not common, but it depends on the type. Psychedelic babe, my electric is free. That must be very nice. I wish we could do something like that, like solar or wind, but because electricity is cheap and because solar is expensive, like the break-even point for solar in my area is like 30 years. So it's not that favorable. It's like the worst of both worlds. Amphit elite reefer or amphit elite reefer. Okay, sorry. What's the perfect reef size in your opinion? I'm always like a bigger is better type of person. I'm like my favorite standard size tank, 8 foot 240. Mike M. Big oil will never let solar get cheap. You know, it's strange because like one of my so I was at the coral supplier yesterday, and he had just gotten back from Iceland, and like they do so much with renewables. It's pretty wild. And he's talking about how like there's actually no hot water heaters anywhere in that country because it's like it's all geothermal because it's like that whole country is seemingly is in like some hot spring or something. But he said you turn on the faucet and it's like piping hot water and it's all just from the ground. Or maybe the water itself isn't from the ground, but it's heated with the ground. Stuff like that. I always think things like that are cool. Like maybe it's that survival bunker mentality in me, but I would love to have like a house that could just go completely off grid. Like it generates its own electricity, makes its own water, collects its own water, all that fun stuff. But that's just me. She's just stealing. Psychedelic Babe is just Stealing electricity. That's interesting work. It's like that to me sounds like I'm sure you're joking, but I'm just thinking that sounds so ridiculously dangerous to do here. Iceland is a volcano. Yeah, that sounds about right. I was just at Yellowstone, and so yeah, that whole place is basically an active volcano. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool, and there's like all these signs everywhere. It's like, do not stray off of this path, otherwise you might just fall into just some loose volcanic soil. I missed something about 42. Ah, I see. That's somebody's age. Robert Biederman, thanks for representing Northeast Ohio, by the way. No problem. It's weird, like, so I've mentioned it before. I was born overseas, and I've lived in a bunch of different places since. So I've lived in Japan briefly. I've lived in Canada briefly. Lived in Massachusetts for a couple of years, I think. And for whatever reason, Ohio has been where like my family has settled down. And even though I've like moved away and worked in different places since then, I always just kind of like come back to this place as home. It's the strangest feeling because there's like there's objectively cooler places than Northeast Ohio. Like I like Northeast Ohio, but let's be real. Like Cleveland, Ohio does not compare in any way, shape, or form favorably to Singapore or Seoul, Korea. That's ridiculous, right? But there is something to be said about living in a place where it doesn't really cost a whole lot to live here, and it's comfortable, and you don't have to worry about a whole lot. So there's that. So Northeast Ohio, go Indians, go Cavs. Browns, you're kind of out of luck. Okay, let's see. Canadian fish and shrimp. How do fathead dendros reproduce? I have a thriving single head, but I'm wondering how it would multiply. Every picture I see on Google shows a bunch of single heads growing up. So if I have never had one personally, but they grow from their base. Like I think they just develop additional heads. I think because I don't have one personally, but I have seen. Actually, Nathan has one, and there's a couple others that I've seen as well. And it seems like it grows like a tubastria in that way. Type 40 with the super chat. Thank you so much, man. Do you already know what time the Halloween live stream will be? The time, okay, it's going to be 2 p.m. So all the live streams are going to be 2 p.m., right? But the date will be on the 28th. So we'll get the website updated at some time today if I remember to do so. And I'll actually create the event today if I remember to do so. But October 28th, 2 p.m. And I don't have a costume picked out. Not yet. And hopefully we'll have some other guests. Like I invited a couple people. We'll see if they actually show up. We'll see. You look as if you'd have a secret dungeon full of ventriloquist dolls. I have a secret dungeon, and it's way creepier than ventriloquist dolls, let me tell you. It's not for the faint of heart. So again, thanks Type 40. I really appreciate the $5. Okay. It's so hard to find context. So, okay, Mother Earth Network, how much snow do you have to manage every year up in Ohio? In the past, it's like that's like the one of the biggest complaints of Northeast Ohio is like the cold weather and a lot of snow and stuff like that. Lately, there's not a lot of snow. Like we have a very, very, very big driveway, very big concrete driveway. And the first year that we had that driveway, it took me with like a hand shovel, literally like 5 hours to clear off. And I'm like, no, this can't happen. So I went out and I got a really nice like John Deere snow thrower, and that cut down that process down to like 45 minutes. And that year I was like, this is the best investment ever. Absolute best investment ever. Well, last year, I had to use it a grand total of 3 times all winter. So we don't get a lot of snow anymore. And maybe it's like a thing where it's like every other year. So like we didn't have a lot of snow last year. So I'm going to get completely obliterated by snow this year. Who knows? So Tim Webb, hello. Welcome. Yeah, like when it comes to weather, it gets like more and more erratic. But we haven't had a bad winter in a while. I think that that one of the worst winters for cold was maybe 3-4 years ago, where we were getting temperatures down to like -30 with wind chill and stuff. But last year's winter was super, super mild. Where is Rico's reef tank? That's a good question. That guy's always in front of his computer. Guerrero Mouse. Than, do you know if aquapores still color up well when nitrate is above 10? I think it can. I mean, 10 isn't super crazy high. It's a little high, but it's not crazy high. But you know, to me, I think that stability of water chemistry and lighting are going to be playing a much bigger role than that. Okay, shed some light onto non-photosynthetic NPS, or NPS, non-photosynthetic or biopellets. Sorry, like I think I did see that question before. Expand on that, please. Yeah, Nathan. Tell us about how your dendros grow instead of calling me on my phone. Okay. Kevin Dewey. Acans receding slowly. Parameters are fine. Lighting. Acans require a lot of light and flow. They do not require a lot of light. And they don't really require a lot of flow either. If anything, sometimes it's a bacterial infection. Like sometimes I see them recede and they have like this bright pink skeleton. That I think is infection related. Now otherwise, you could be looking at feeding can sometimes help. Like there's some LPS specific pellets, like Fauna Marin makes some. There's a couple others. Coral Forensi. There's a few different types. Or you can go frozen. So yeah, December is gonna be cold here. I don't mind cold anymore. Like, so there's a few things that I just don't like. I don't like it when it's super hot. I don't like mosquitoes. I don't like mowing the grass. And all these things kind of are summertime things. Oh, you know what I also don't like? Low sales as a result of being summertime. So the winter, it's like people get back into the coral hobby. I like that. And all of the other, and I like to wear fall and winter clothing because I find it more comfortable for some odd reason. I know, like, I'm an outlier when it comes to that, but I don't wear a lot of shorts and short sleeves a lot. So all this stuff kind of like trends towards, the winter time. And before it was like, oh, but it's miserable. It's super, super cold. Well, I just decided to go get like Arctic level outdoor gear, and I'm not cold anymore. So I get the best of all worlds here. I guess the only problem is that I'm paying for like superheating costs because of my house having no insulation. But even then, it's still cheaper than air conditioning. So I'm not complaining. I like the winter. I'm much happier in the fall and winter. Okay, so yes, non-photosynthetic. Okay, so it depends on what kind of non-photosynthetic coral you're talking about. There's the kind that you can like feed directly, things like Tabastria, sun corals, and whatnot, that if you just keep them fed maybe like a few times a day, preferably with large amounts of food, you're doing good. But there's filter feeders that have to be fed pretty much constantly 24 hours a day, and those are not going to do well for you. A lot of the non-photosynthetic sea fans, Dendronephthia, carnation corals, that sort of thing, they're going to really struggle. And in general, I haven't even seen public aquariums do very well with those. The best public aquariums that I've seen that do anything with non-photosynthetic, basically they're pumping in water from the ocean and then also just have like a doser dumping food into that particular tank and having the natural water like flush out 100% probably every hour. Okay. Yeah, when it comes to like insulation and stuff, I'm on board with that. Like I can totally appreciate from the beginning doing it right and just getting like R19 walls and R60 in the ceiling. I'm all about that. Unfortunately, like this house, like you have to understand, houses built 100 years ago, they do some things super well and they do other things not so super well. So there's not enough room in my attic for a lot of insulation stuff like that. And the walls themselves, they don't even have studs, so you can't really put up bad insulation very easily. It's not ideal. Roy Cruz, thank you so much for the £5 donation. Appreciate it. Hello, Than. Great Q&A. Some of my paleothoas droop their tentacles, creating an umbrella shape. Is that something to be worried about? No, it's not. That's actually like normal behavior. Don't really know why they do it, but it's fairly common to see. It comes and goes. Sometimes they decide to do it, sometimes they don't. I kind of liken it to bubble tip anemones, where sometimes you'll see like big bubble tips, other times you'll see no bubble at the tip at all. And it's not an indication of health or wellness or anything, because sometimes you can have the ones with no bubble tips, and the anemone itself is a good 12 inches across, and it's like flowing and happy. So it's one of those things where the coral itself is just expressing some personal preference, and it's just kind of doing its own thing. It'll be fine. Let's see. Okay, Addie Reef. I've just put a calcium reactor on my tank, and my DKH and magnetism went sky high. I'm guessing that means magnesium went sky high. I've turned down the drip rate and it's going down slowly. Would this be okay, or should I water change? Well, if you're asking me, you can always do water changes, right? But I think that it's strange that the DKH and magnesium went up quickly, because typically calcium reactors are very gentle in that. So I'm wondering if it's something else entirely that had happened. I don't know if you were using a calcium reactor in addition to another form of dosing, because if you were using, like, let's say Kalkwasser and maybe a 2-part or something like that, and then you add in a calcium reactor and you're still doing those other two, what the calcium reactor is going to do is it's going to set a much more stable baseline, and then you're going to load up on top of that. So if it was you weren't doing anything and then you just added a calcium reactor, it's very strange for it to have those peaks like that. It's a lot more about maintaining rather than raising quickly. So other question is, like, should you do a water change? It couldn't hurt, but I don't know if it's like a huge deal either. And you said it's going down slowly. That makes me think that, the calcium reactor is kind of doing its thing. Than, I have a couple branching frog spawn that I've had for a year now, and they are stretching. I've moved them, changing flow and light. Yeah, not sure if I see a question there. I'm trying to think if there's a question. If the issue was about coral aggression, that's kind of sometimes the only thing you can do is to relocate. But frog spawn that really start to take off, they can obviously get pretty full and pretty aggressive with sweeper tentacles. So sometimes you have to cut them back or sell off a few pieces, find a new tank for them, yada yada yada. Okay, St. Pinoy 1984. I'm dosing 2-part mag. Do I need to dose calc as well? It depends. So really the reason why people dose calc is it's a balanced method of raising calcium and alkalinity or replenishing calcium and alkalinity. It's different than 2-part calcium alkalinity. It's a different chemical entirely, but the idea is that you're kind of doing both simultaneously and in equal proportions. Whereas if you're using 2-part and like your alkalinity is a little high, you can back down off of that particular chemical and raise up the calcium a little bit, that sort of thing. Calc is kind of its own thing. In dosing 2-part magnesium, that's kind of like that third leg in the kind of the holy trinity of alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium. They kind of all play together. I did a video kind of talking about that relationship, but they're all kind of very separate things. You'll know if you need to dose calc if both your calcium and alkalinity are kind of low. Each polyp is stretching upwards up to my light 252s over 4'90". Yeah, it seems fine. I mean, it's doesn't sound like it's anything too crazy. What do you think of ATI Essentials? I have not used ATI Essentials. I'm guessing it sounds like an essential elements, like a trace element supplement. That would be my guess. Trace elements in general, I think, are kind of nebulous in that when you look at the amount of trace element that's actually in salt water, it's way less than 1%. And so, any additive of that, you really run the risk of just overdoing it. And most people don't test for trace elements. I mean, there's a lot of like good test kits now. There's also good testing services that can give you very accurate readings on that. But I would say almost 100% of the hobby does not do a lot of testing for trace. Like iodine. When was the last time? In chat, tell me when was the last time you did an iodine test kit? I don't think I've done one in the last 5 years. So why would I be adding iodine to my system? Blindly, right? If you're doing a lot of the testing for these things, great. Check out some trace element supplementation. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and blindly assume that the salt mix is keeping me covered on that front. Again, it is a super, super tiny fraction of what makes up salt water. Leo Cantoni. I have a sponge growing on my rocks, and it's starting to cover my zoas. Any idea of getting rid of it? Thanks. Unfortunately, those are like the pest-type sponges that overgrow corals. They're difficult to get rid of. Like, you're probably talking toothbrush or like some little metal scraper or something to kind of remove it, and you have to kind of keep up with it because like people say, when you buy like sponges, you can't expose them to air, you can't do this and that, otherwise the sponge will die. That's only true for the pretty ones that you're trying to keep. For the parasitic ones, or like the ones that are just overgrowing stuff, parasitic is the wrong word, it's just the ones that are just out competing a coral next to it, those are indestructible. You can run those under fresh water for an hour and they'll come right back. It's just how it is. Like, the ugly ones will live. So you kind of have to keep up with that. Tattooed Dancer 91. I added Caulerpa to my Refugium. It's growing way faster than the Chaeto. Should I remove the Chaeto and bet all on Caulerpa? I probably would not, just because Caulerpa, it has the problem of potentially what's called going sexual, where it just turns into like mush and basically makes like this green water situation in your tank, and that actually can be toxic to a lot of things. So that's kind of the risk that comes with Caulerpa. It's a very, very fast growing macroalgae, but again, the problem is that it does have like this this doomsday button associated with it. So I would probably keep that well pruned and occasionally feed it to herbivores, things of that sort. If you leave the lights on all the time, Clerpa won't go sexual. I have heard that as well, but I mean, considering like just risk reward on such a thing, it's like we're talking about an algae refugium type system that should never ever ever potentially ruin your tank. Like it's one of those things. Like I have this great protein skimmer, it's doing really really well, but once every 100 days it runs the risk of killing everything. No, not good. Not a good trade-off. So again, it's I would keep it just well pruned. I mean, if you like the macroalgae, just keep it under control. Don't go crazy. Guerrero Mouse fan, do you know why my foxface rabbitfish is bothering my elegance coral? Uh, well, my question would be, was the elegance added recently? Because some fox faces and rabbitfish in general can bother corals. Absolutely true. But it's uncommon for them to do so. What's a lot more common for them to do is to bother any new coral that's been added to a system. Like they're very curious, naturally curious, and they kind of like express this curiosity by nibbling on whatever new thing is out there. And so like there's certain tanks that we simply can't put things like Trachophilia in. Not because these things like to necessarily eat trachees, but in their curiosity of all these new corals that got put in, it's going to bite the trachees enough that it's going to cause them to recede. So, and it'll do that in like one day. So that first day where it's like really, really curious and just biting everything, that's enough to really send all those corals into a downward spiral. So yeah, if it's a constant thing over like a long period of time, that's very strange. You're just gonna have to move the fish or move the coral. But it's not, again, not that typical. Okay. Kevin Dewey, do you have a personal tank or is this all just business? It's all been business. Like I was trying to think the other day, when was the last time that I had a personal home aquarium? And I think it sounds crazy, but it might have been around 2000. Yeah, like 2000, 2001 maybe. So I've gone over 15 years without a fish tank, like a personal fish tank. Yeah, like it seems like just yesterday, like, oh yeah, I remember having a fish tank, but it's like, actually, no, I really haven't. The last fish tank I had was was at my parents' place, and I had kept that tank running while I was in college and stuff. But no, nothing recently. Part of it is like for my home, I like it to be quieter, and the way that this place kind of like radiates sound, like a fish tank in here would just not work out. And the other thing is like about 200 feet down my driveway is a lot of fish tanks, so it's not like this is kind of something that's missing in my life, I guess. So no, I haven't. That and now I have cats, and I'm pretty sure that these cats would somehow make it into the fish tank or chew on some power cable. There's that too. Okay. So this was an opportunistic ordeal, and it's not a passion. Um, that's tough. Like, I think that I've been doing saltwater in some form or another since I was about 8 years old. So it's led into other interests as well. So I'm like into film and video production now, and I think just like entrepreneurship itself it has become its own hobby and own interest. So it's kind of it's almost like the palette where all this other stuff is happening on top of as well. It's sad to see that you don't have a thriving tank after all that. I've got a lot of thriving tanks, again. It's just not a show tank, but it is its own thing. Yeah, as far as like my own tank, see, the thing is like, if you've done the hobby for like 30 something years, it ends up being where like the day-to-day stuff that people actually enjoy as part of the hobby, like doing the maintenance, doing the water changes and all that stuff, like all that stuff starts to, and especially if you run it as like a business for so long, it's a lot of that stuff just gets delegated out, and so it becomes less and less of an actual hobby. It's more like a checklist of stuff to do rather than an actual hobby. And so I appreciate a lot more, I guess, the efforts of other people that have done it super well, rather than me trying to replicate anything of that sort. Like the sort of systems that really get me excited are not necessarily show tanks, but are super large, super well thought out systems for like grow out and propagation. Like that stuff gets me excited. But if something for like my living room or something like that, no, I don't quite see it. Do your parents have a tank, and would you do a video of it? DJ Loins, they don't have a tank. What they do have is this greenhouse, and they make every excuse to come over, and they just do stuff. So like my dad, who's the college professor, he loves to propagate. And he's like getting close to retirement age, and so like every single day he tries to find a reason to leave the lab, leave the office, come over here and just start propagating corals. And so yeah, he's gonna have his whole own system that he can just play with. Addy magnesium, sorry, it's at 1580 and DKH is at 15. Okay, so those are astronomically high figures. Going back to that original question, you might want to do a water change for that, because that's, well, the other thing is like your test kit, get a second opinion on the test kits, just so you know that it's not just a particular kit that's reading high. But yeah, those are really, 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 really high numbers. Man, I'm a biology teacher in Denmark. Could you write some educational material about saltwater and corals, just so you don't have to write it? You can check out the website. I think I've written a bunch of stuff on there. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how much stuff I've written. It's probably a lot out there that you can reference. I wish to see how Than would set up a tank aside from business. Yeah, and I guess that's the problem. Like, if the sort of system that I would like to set up would not make any... So, I was about to say, doesn't make any business sense to do so. But I do a lot of things for this business that doesn't make any business sense to do so. For example, there is no reason for me to own one of these. Canon C200. No reason for me to have that. I just wanted it. So clearly, like, a ginormous fish tank did not make that list. But if I was to do a tank like that, it would be monstrous, like 4,000 gallons. Just an absolute like public aquarium display size thing. And not only does it not make business sense, but it's like it is such a technical hurdle to achieve that I don't know. It might not be impossible. It might not be impossible. It might be extremely unwise, but it might not be impossible. Double negative there. So who knows? I might surprise myself, let's just say. There might be something insane going down. Anyone else whose blue tang throws frags around the tank? Yeah, mine. Yeah, I don't know why they do that, but we've got this this bow front tank, and there's a blue tang in there, like a blue hippo tang. Every single day he's throwing acros around. Every single day we have to pick him up and put him back. checking on something here. Okay, slightly off topic, but there's this movie that's come out really recently here called Blade Runner 2049. I'm super excited for that movie. I was gonna see it like yesterday, but then I got tied up with some other things. But I might go see that today. And I might go see that earlier this afternoon than I had initially planned, looking at these different show times and whatnot. But as I prepare to go eat lunch here, I do have something for you guys, which, hold on, let me answer a couple questions here before I get into that. Than, are you on city sewer? I believe that you mentioned you do up to 6 water changes a week. Is there any issues with that volume of salt water going to the drain to reuse your RO waste? Interesting you say that, Casey. So let me handle that in pieces parts. On city sewer, no. We use well, and there's no sewer on this road. The other thing is, do you use salt water going down the drain? Any issues with that volume? No. Do you reuse your RO waste? So currently, we're just watering plants with that RO waste, but we're looking into installing a rainwater collection cistern, because like we have like multiple buildings in the back, like warehouses, greenhouse, obviously, and there's a website that I found from like the state of Ohio that talks about rainwater collection. They're actually pretty, like, I guess, progressive in that, in the sense that they really want people to start looking into these like secondary water source type things. And so they have all this data out there as to like why it's a good idea for you to consider putting in like a rainwater collection cistern. And for like the square footage that we're talking about here, and the rainfall that's in Northeast Ohio, it'll collect upwards of like 100,000 gallons a year of rainwater. And I'm like, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. That would be a huge component of what we did here. And we have a giant water commercial setup, right? Now, going back to your RO wastewater thing, what I would like to do is draw water from that cistern. It goes through all of its, all the different stages of cleaning, hits that RO system, and then the wastewater line would then go right back into that water cistern. So essentially that water, even like the wastewater line, it's a lot cleaner than whatever the heck was in there to begin with. So like just the RO system, even like just the wastewater portion, recirculation, is filtering that water cistern, and then the super clean water is then what we would use for the tanks. So that's kind of like in the future what I'm thinking about doing with the thing. Otherwise, like currently, it's just watering plants. Okay, DJ Lawrence, have you ever been to the Cleveland Aquarium yet? Long ago, like pretty much before it opened. I was talking to the, what do you call it? The builder of the aquarium. It was like a foreign company that did it, and the guy was like, I think he was Scottish. And he took me around, and like actually I even stood in the place where their shark tank was going to be. It was completely empty at the time, and did a full walkthrough. And they were even in discussions to like have me do their reef exhibit. But once the regular ownership group like finally kind of got handed over the keys and whatnot, they decided to go their own way on that. But yeah, I mean, I've only been there just that one time, like right when it opened, with the builder, and then I haven't been back. And I don't remember what year that was. It's been a while. It's a smaller aquarium. I mean, it's like a smaller regional aquarium. It's not on the scale of like Shed or Singapore or anything like that. And so like it's tough to compete when you've seen like world-class aquariums, because there's like a lot of different cities have smaller aquariums. That's fine, but when you've seen like for example the aquarium in Okinawa or in Singapore or Shed or like the Baltimore aquarium or like the Georgia aquarium, it's really hard to get excited about smaller aquariums. Okay. How's that acrylic tank doing? The one that you polished in one of your videos? I think I sold it like about a week after I did that video, so it's gone, long gone. Okay, Alex Crittenden. Could you try to partner with the tank maker to get a good deal on your dream tank? I'd like to. Chances are my dream tank is going to be more concrete than it's going to be glass. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm Facebook friends with the guy from Reef Savvy. I've never met him in person though. I was meaning to go talk to him at MACNA, and for whatever reason I didn't see him there. I didn't even see his booth. But then again, I kind of didn't spend a lot of time at MACNA. Yeah, but it just occurred to me like after I had left, I was like, hey, I should have talked to that guy from Reef Savvy, Felix, and I just didn't. Darn it. Neil Pretorius, greetings from South Africa. Hey, thanks for joining. Greetings from Costa Rica. Glad you guys could make it. Dominic Martino. What can you tell me about grafting Montipora together, and why is it not more common? I think that the reason why you don't see a lot of it is because there's a name for that interaction. It's like ileopathic something, and I can never remember it, and it's hard to Google because there's like no real material on it, even online. But essentially, you're talking about splicing two separate organisms that would otherwise be fighting. So like if you took different types of plating Montipora and kind of glued them all together, what's most likely to happen is that they're not going to fuse. Instead, they're just going to fight one another until kind of like a survival of the fittest sort of situation. But on rare occasion, they actually do fuse into one organism, and that's where you get that grafting stuff. And the reason why it's not more common is because you're talking about a very uncommon interaction, and the other possibility is them killing one another. So there's that. But it is cool. I mean, we do have some grafted pieces. I think that like one of them came through a supplier, through Worldwide Coral, something along those lines. But I think that Worldwide Coral initially did that. I'm trying to think if there's any that we've done minor grafting in the sense that we had some nuclear green Paleothoa and some purple death Paleothoa, and we just glued like the colonies close to one another, and eventually you get like the half green, half purple looking Paleothoas. But it's not common at all, and and to do it commercially, it's so low product output that it doesn't make a lot of sense. But we were just doing it for fun. Benjamin, hello from Norway. Hello. I still need to come visit Norway, and it's any of those Scandinavian countries I would like to come see. Xenogenic fusion. Grafting is called xenogenic fusion. Let me go Dr. Google that real quick. Autonomous xenogenic cell fusion. Something about chickens. About murine and chick skeletal something. And something about sheep. Corals. Hold on. I'm going to Dr. Google xenogenic fusion corals. Huh. Interesting. Yeah. So guys, Google that on your own time. See what you guys think. So ROI or Roy, thank you very much for that. And hello from Malta. How much did you miss? Looks like I have been on for a little over an hour. Not too long at all. Not too long at all. Okay, so it is almost lunchtime for me. And sorry for the little bit of a shorter live show here. But I will leave you guys with something. So Patrick Schultz, would a 6-line be a good fish for a small frag tank? Yeah, 6 lines are fine for that. They stay relatively small, they're pretty docile, and they do some pest control to a limited degree. So yeah, good choice. I am going to go over here for a sec. Do copper bands pick on LPS? So Kayvon, no, not in my experience at all. No, I wouldn't hesitate to put a copper band into any tank really, except a tank that I think that it might starve in. That's like my biggest concern. Canadian fish and shrimp. Is it a bad idea to run 2 reactors in series? Having pump go to GFO reactor to biopellet reactor to skimmer intake. Okay, 2 reactors in series. What I would be more likely to do is to have one pump. I basically run it in parallel, not series. What I would have is one pump go to a manifold with different controls, different probably gate valve controls, and each of those gate valves would go off to the different reactors, GFO, biopellet, skimmer intake, and all that stuff. So that's how I would do it. I wouldn't run it in a series that would go into a reactor. The output would then go into another reactor, and the output of that goes into a skimmer. I wouldn't do that if that's what you were saying. How do I freeze food to maintain its nutrients? You're going to have to ask somebody that knows a lot better. I just freeze them, so can't be too much help there. When is the next live stream going to be, Jake Andrade? It's going to be on the 28th of October at 2 p.m. I'm going to be updating the website fairly soon here. Okay, so Merfolk MTG. When are we going to get new vids? Good question. You're going to get one right now. Let's see here. I had processed this guy last night, and I wanted just to say thank you guys for attending this little live Q&A. And it has been a little while since I did a video, so this one here is a bit long. It's like almost 25 minutes. So it's comparing 3 different people's aquariums, looking at kind of the decisions they made for lighting, the decisions that they made for filtration, their maintenance, things of that sort, just to like kind of compare and contrast, because the point is there's a lot of ways to do this hobby successfully, and it just illustrates that if you do an overall good job, like the particular things that you decide to go with might not be as relevant as you think. So anyways, thank you guys so much. That video should be live, so enjoy, and I'm gonna go watch Blade Runner now. So take care, guys.